All right, day 2 of training camp in West Virginia. As has happened in training camp a lot this year, the defense is very much ahead of the offense in a lot of respects, as should be expected. But the defense will have a really good day. The offense looks like they're haphazard and lost. Then they come back and they look like a more functioning unit. And it wasn't like it was a brilliant day for the offense, but I thought they took some steps in some positive directions, and they cleaned some things up. We'll get to C.J. Stroud and the offense and the things that they did better today. Some of the stars on defense, Kamari Lassiter especially, but also remind me if I don't get to this by the end. Spoke to three different people actually, that spend a lot of time at a lot of different training camps. Pat Kerwin and Jim Miller from Sirius XM. I'm an old teammate of Jim Miller's from back in the day, and I talked to Pat Kerwin for probably about 20, 30 minutes on the sideline about a lot of the stuff that's going on in the league right now, other camps he's been to, and that was really enlightening. He is a very smart guy. And then I talked to Ben Solak, too, formerly of The Ringer, now of ESPN. He's been to a few camps this year. He had some really positive things to say about the offense, and almost, I think, tried to quell some of the fears and doubts that we might have as we're hyper-focused on some of the negatives. So the first things first, the depth chart. I know the depth chart came out. I am very much like D'Amico, who said that he wasn't even aware that they were putting a depth chart out until Omar gave him one this morning, and he just ripped it up and threw it down because, as we know, the PR team has to come up with a depth chart for the first preseason game, and it's as much of a guess as it is for the rest of us. People noted that Jarrett Patterson was the starting center, whereas Jake Andrews has actually been getting more of the reps with the ones. I think that's still a competition, so I wouldn't read too much into that. The other thing that happened today that was interesting was with Titus Howard out at right tackle, Ursary at left tackle, you had Ed Ingram at guard, and then you also had Juice Scruggs, both of those guys at right guard at times. So a lot of competition still. If it ends up with Titus Howard at right tackle for whatever reason, maybe Cam Robinson, if they don't feel comfortable with him or if his injury is worse than it seems like it is right now, that right guard spot, or at least swing interior offensive lineman, is still very much in competition. C.J. Stroud didn't have a great day, but I think the offense in total looked a lot cleaner versus a defense that's just, they're firing on all cylinders right now. And the biggest thing that I got from talking to Ben Solak, honestly, is something that it was kind of confirmation of something that I've been saying, which is the pre-snap stuff when you're installing a new offense really, really matters. And typically what happens is it's a sloppy affair the first couple weeks you're installing an offense. I haven't gotten the impression at all that it's sloppy pre-snap. There haven't been false starts all over the place. There haven't been egregious miscues, and that's a good sign. And it might not sound like a big deal, but just running a clean operation first and foremost. Remember where for the first half of last season, the Texans were leading the league in pre-snap penalties. A lot of that because of Laramie Tunsil, but also because of other reasons. I think that it's a cleaner operation right now. And they're going to be running relatively vanilla stuff as they're installing and trying to get comfortable in this system versus a defense that's firing on all cylinders. And for whatever this is worth, and I'd say this is a reason, not an excuse at this point, they're not going against a rotating defensive line. That offensive line is facing Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter every single snap. They're facing fresh defensive tackles. And that's not necessarily how it is in an actual game. So, yeah, the Texans are going to face other good defenses this year. It might not ever be as difficult as when they're facing this Texans defense, as good as they are, completely fresh and healthy, knock on wood. But also, D'Amico's not taking it easy on him. I mean, D'Amico's throwing a lot of exotic stuff at him, blitzes, different coverages, and the offense kind of takes one on the chin, then comes back and adjusts, and I think they've made some steady progress. So I'm not freaking out or nervous at all. If this were week 6 and this were happening in regular season games, yeah, I'd be nervous and freaking out. The offensive line is still, for me, the biggest concern because we just don't know what it's going to look like, and we just don't know if Cole Popovich is genuinely going to be a good coach or that Nick Caley can engineer a run game. So CJ hasn't looked like the ball placement specialist that we typically see. Kamari Lassiter had a great great day today. He had 2 interceptions, both on CJ. The first one, he was running step for step with Nico Collins, and CJ kind of sailed the ball, and Kamari Lassiter took advantage of it. Second one was a PBU where Kamari Lassiter basically knocked the ball, broke the pass up out of Xavier Hutchinson's hands, and I think the pass was fine, at least from where I was sitting. It's more a great play by Kamari Lassiter. Kamari Lassiter is just, he's looked phenomenal. He's looked like he's going to take another step forward. I don't think you have to necessarily worry about Kamari Lassiter having a second-year slump. I talked to Kamari yesterday, and one of the things he talked about, I asked him what specifically he thought offenses might attack with him this year, or what they might be focused on. And he said for him last year, the biggest adjustment was playing off the ball so much instead of just always up and playing press man. They had him off the ball, and that was an adjustment for him. So that's something that he's working on improving, and he did. He made a lot of progress over the second half of the season in that regard. So I'm not worried about him at all, obviously. The offense itself, aside from the clean operation, what I would say is the quick game was good today, and that's something that was not what it needed to be last year. And really a lot of their quick game last year was just that Stefon Diggs was really good and CJ could rely on him, and he could throw tight window throws to Stefon Diggs or throw to an open Stefon Diggs early in the down, or if he got in trouble with the pass protection. Once that went away last year, you could see how CJ's numbers diminished. I mean, a lot of categories and average yards per attempt and things like that. You know, he was down almost a full yard in some respects after Stefon Diggs went out. This year, I think they're going to have more answers for the blitz. Hot routes were relatively non-existent last year. Hot routes are going to be a part of this year's system, and CJ's shown progress in that regard, and they made hay today on some of the shorter stuff. Christian Kirk probably got most of those receptions. Nico Collins over the middle at times, and just if they can establish the run game, because that's going to be a big part of this offense, that's a huge question. We saw progress there today as well. Nick Chubb had a really nice run. Depending on if and when they tackled him, anywhere between 15 and 30 yards probably on a play that he bounced to the outside. The thing that I saw that was more encouraging today was the stuff up the middle. I saw the O-line get actual push versus the starters. And when Nick Chubb has good blocking in front of him, you can still see he has that vision, and he still has that leg strength. I don't know if he still has the same burst that he had, and he might never get that burst back. You might never see prime. You might not ever see the prime version of Nick Chubb again. But really, let's remember, what this team needs is the ability to, if you're going to run the ball on first down, just get at least 3 yards consistently. Anything on top of that, obviously, take it. But 3 or 4 yards just to keep the ball moving, to keep making it more manageable and staying on schedule is something they didn't have last year. Chubb can be a part of that, partly because aside from his physical skills, I think he is a little bit more of a run the play as it's called type of guy. Mixon's got that yearning to sometimes bounce it outside, and I think sometimes he freelances a little bit, and it's fine. That's his style, and it works for him, and it creates some big home runs at times. I think there's an element to Chubb's game that's, for lack of a better word, maybe just conservative and by the book. And for where he is at this stage in his career and recovering from that knee injury, I don't worry about Chubb and his ego potentially being insulted because he somehow isn't being used the same way he used to. Every single person you talk to about Nick Chubb says he's just the consummate professional. And I think whatever role the Texans choose to use him in this year, I think he's going to attack that role. And it doesn't have to be that he's the marquee guy. Like, he knew coming here, obviously, that Joe Mixon's going to be the marquee guy. Pat Kerwin, and something I talked to him about today, is probably relevant to bring up here since we're talking about the Texans rushing attack. Kerwin and Jim Miller on Sirius NFL, they go to, I think they might go to every single camp. They go to a lot of camps. Like, they were here in Houston for one day, then I want to say he's headed, I don't know where he's headed after this. But he said he went to 6 straight camps where teams are planning on using a fullback this year. And if you recall last year, people, anybody below the age of 35 was saying, "Oh yeah, this cover two. How do you stop it? I don't know. My stars. What do I? You run the ball." The problem is, so many offensive coordinators these days, they don't care about the run game. They don't understand how to construct a run game. It's evaporated in some respects because of the way the NFL game has changed, and every whiz kid offensive coordinator wants to be a passing guru, that they've lost the simple tools. It's like when a tribe in South America loses the ability to create fire, and then they wander through the forest, and they have to keep a little bit of kindling alive at all time because they've forgotten how to make fire. Like, that's what NFL offenses have become. So there's some teams like the Steelers, I think, that are just planning on, we look around the league, we see teams and defenses playing a nickel all the time. That's their base defense. We're just going to run it down their throats. We're going to try to be some semblance of the Baltimore Ravens and just physically dominate and punish these guys. And I think that's why you've started to see running back salaries start to rise a little bit again. The pendulum always swings back and forth in the NFL. And just as soon as people say, "Oh, the run game is dead, that's not the way you make your money these days," boom, the door gets slammed back shut. So I'm cool with what their philosophy is this year for this. EJ Speed has done good things in both these days that I've seen him here in training camp. The two guys I would say that are kind of maybe dark horse defensive players to watch who are notable offseason acquisitions are EJ Speed and Darrell Taylor. Darrell Taylor, the defensive end, many of you recall, had a really good rookie year in Seattle, then kind of fell off and didn't produce as much, was in Chicago for 1 year last year. But when you watch him just move through drills, if you came out on the field and if he was working out with the linebackers instead of the defensive line, I don't think you would notice a difference. He moves that athletically. And when he comes down inside, he can rush against guards and centers if they're using him on a blitz that way. He is really talented and gifted. I'm really excited to see what he can do in this defense and with Rod Wright as they rotate their defensive ends. So Darrell Taylor, EJ Speed, very, very positive reviews on them. I think they're going to figure out a way to use EJ Speed. Is he a starter? Is he used situationally? I don't know. There's going to be injuries at some point, but I think you might see the very best version of EJ Speed in this defense with D'Amico Ryans and however he chooses to use them. You know, he was a guy that was a special teams guy early on in his career, didn't play defense much at all, and then transitioned into a starting role in Indianapolis. But I still think there's upside and growth with EJ Speed if he's found really the right system for him and if they use him properly. Fights. I forgot I put that on the title. I should have gotten to that immediately. Two, scrums, fights, whatever you want to call them these days, shoving matches. Let's see. The first was Cade Stover caught a pass in the flats, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson wrapped him up aggressively. And then I'm not sure exactly what happened after that. I don't know if Cade Stover took offense to C.J. Gardner-Johnson still kind of running his legs or not, but Cade reached up and kind of put C.J. Gardner-Johnson in a headlock, and they ran it out of bounds that way, and I think to the ground, but the scrum kind of wrapped up around them, and you couldn't see what was going on after that. Except that Cade Stover was pissed. He remained pissed, and he was walking away from the scrum, just looking back at the defense and pointing. And he's got a pretty badass bunch of tattoos on his right arm. And he's got a nice beard going this year. Very, very caveman moment for Cade Stover, which I appreciate. And then Dalton Schultz. If you want to see more zest and life out of the tight ends room this year, I think Cade Stover has improved in a lot of ways. I think Dalton Schultz is hopefully maybe there were health issues last year. He kind of hinted at it in the last week in his press conference, but he wouldn't come right out and blame it. But he's very much engaged, and he got into it with Yeast, the safety. And Yeast has been pretty chippy. I think Landry predicted that Yeast would be involved in one of the first fights, and lo and behold, Yeast gave Dalton Schultz a little bit of the business as he caught a pass. Dalton Schultz was given the first down signal, and then I can't remember what happened other than that Dalton Schultz ended up basically charging Yeast and wrapping him up, and then there was a scrum and everything. So there's a little feistiness, but nothing that spilled over or anything. Remember last year when Derek Stingley hit Dalton Schultz after the one melee with, I think it was Jimmy Ward hit Stephon Diggs? Just some good juiciness and spiciness. It was fun to see. They got really good energy out there. This weather does not hurt. I don't know how many of you want to hear this, and I'm just going to tell you what I see out there. Davis Mills has looked really good. Davis Mills has had some beautiful arcing passes today to Jaden Higgins, at least a couple of times that I saw. It may have been more than just the twice. Had a couple of nice deep shots to Jaden Higgins. Had one to Xavier Hutchinson. Davis Mills is at a point now where he's had multiple offensive coordinators. He's been in multiple schemes. His ability to kind of connect with these guys going against the twos and getting good work, and Higgins and Knoll getting good work against the twos. Higgins, I think, has gotten more reps with the ones than Knoll has, which makes sense. Christian Kirk's going to be the starting slot unless there's some kind of surprise. Jalen Knoll, they can bring along a little bit more slowly. But I think Jaden Higgins, for one, against the second team, which on this defense includes a lot of guys that could be starters on other teams, has done really, really well, and he's run with the ones a lot. So that's I'll be surprised if Jaden Higgins doesn't play a prominent role in this offense in a very good way this year. With I already talked about my chat with Pat Kerwin. I think I'm going to be talking to Danielle Hunter after practice either tomorrow or the next day, and I'll put my interviews with Kalen Bullock and Kamari Lassiter on after this. Let's see. I'd be careful dealing with Stover. He'll handle you like them cattle back home. He massages the cattle back home. I don't know if you've ever seen that video or not, but he's got the one bull that really likes to be massaged, so he just gives him a back rub. They have a farm in Ohio where they sell. They'll sell like an entire side of beef or a whole cow to families to feed themselves for a year. It's pretty cool because they can come out, they can visit the farm, they can see how humanely the animals are treated and everything. They keep it nice and really clean. His dad started off, and I think still does, in construction, but they also beef cattle, man. I know. Listen. Ranching is still dicey if that's your full-time vocation, but the lesson for kids is always awesome because you start off with a couple of steers, and over time, and a heifer, obviously, you breed them, and one becomes two becomes four becomes 8, and just over time, you build yourself up a nice little portfolio of cattle. And it's work that often sucks. It's awesome a lot of the time, but sometimes it just sucks, particularly in winter. Builds character. Wrestling and farming, two best things you can do to instill character in your children, aside from all the other, classes. Yeah, take them to church and all that. But also take them to cows. We're not worried about CJ at all. He'll be great this season. I'm with CJ right now, I'm not worried about him. I think, but I'm also not going to be dishonest. If I went out to practice and I watched without knowing anybody, I wouldn't think that CJ is as accurate as we know he is. So in this new offense and going against that defense where these guys, they've got a feel for the receivers they're seeing. They're jumping routes. They're making life really, really difficult. They're blitzing and they're doing all these things. They're taking advantage of an offensive line that's a little bit discombobulated right now. It's been very uncomfortable for CJ. Because of that, and I don't think for any other reason really, unless his shoulder is still bothering him or something, but we haven't had any reports that it is, that I think that he looks uncomfortable, and you haven't really been able to see the peak version of CJ. The quick game is probably where I'm most encouraged, just because some of those are just rapid-fire decisions. But when it gets beyond that, when he's going to his second or third read, it's a really murky look, and it's almost like when you watch a good basketball team defensively, and you kind of try to, when you're watching from one of from the baseline or something, you kind of look at it and you try to imagine yourself as the point guard, and you're like, I don't know where he goes with the ball right now. That's what CJ looks like. It looks like he's a point guard facing a classic Jim Boeheim zone defense where there's arms and legs everywhere and in every passing lane. That's what it looks like, and at times he's left either without answers or forcing the ball. And And I was talking to somebody out there today, and I almost felt like you don't want to take it easy on guys, but there is something to be said for, you know what, let CJ take the ones against the twos at times, like little bit, like be able to run the offense. You know, don't let your kids use some training wheels for a little bit until they get the basics down, and then take the training wheels off. And we might see that. I think it might be trial by fire at this point, but there's a whole lot of new on the offense going against a defense that is just more refining and tweaking and, you know, still having competitions at spots between guys who actually really understand their defense like the back of their hands. And it's going to be difficult. So I'm not freaking out about it. At some point, it's just everything needs to click together. Offensive line. If we go to the offensive line, when Titus Howard goes out to right tackle, that's where I start to get nervous about the interior offensive line. I think right now, Jake Andrews has been more impressive to me in the run game than Jarrett Patterson has. I think both guys in pass protection have their limitations. The part of, you know, Jarrett Patterson being able to make the calls and everything and having more experience than Jake Andrews, that's probably going to be a factor ultimately in their decision. And then at guard, you know, I think Ed Ingram will be just fine. Laken Tomlinson will be just fine at left guard. Right guard right now is the huge question mark if Titus Howard is playing right tackle. And, you know, if Cam Robinson comes back and he's healthy, then it might not even be a concern. But there's still some of those same problems where you're seeing some of the same faces who struggled last year. And, you know, if Juice Scruggs ends up starting at right guard, I'm going to have to see an improved version of Juice Scruggs. But the pre-snap operation has been really good. I think there's some things right now where they're in the remedial stages of learning this offense that they are doing smoother than a lot of new offenses are doing. You know, like sometimes, I mean, it's frustrating. I'll go back to like the expansion year, which was an extreme example, obviously, of they couldn't get a snap off in practice. I went into that Cowboys game, the first game of the franchise's existence, just thinking we were going to get absolutely destroyed because we would go that week leading up to that game, we couldn't get through the first period of practice because they kept fumbling snaps, so they couldn't get the snap count right. So that's a real thing. And that was one thing I talked to Ben Solak about, was him having been at various places and a couple other teams that I don't think you'd probably want me to mention, where they're installing new offenses and it's a bleep show. It's just it's mayhem all over the place. It hasn't looked like that. I think Nick Caley, at the very least, is running a tight ship in terms of execution. And they're going to be somewhat vanilla while they're going against a really good defense right now. It's not going to look great. It might not look great for the next couple of weeks as long as they have to go against other defenses. The real test, obviously, is going to be in the regular season. But I would like to see some evidence of it in the preseason. And I don't know how much they're planning on playing CJ or the starters. The very short-sighted part of me wants CJ and the starters to play an entire half versus that Vikings defense, because that's a really good defense, but they're probably not going to have all their starters out there. I just want to see them get this down. If you go back to Bill O'Brien's first year, remember that game against the Cardinals? It was bad. It was really, really bad. They ended up keeping the starters in for the whole first half until they finally got a drive going at the end of the first half, and that offense ended up being okay. That offense ended up being a big improvement that year compared to what it had been the year before. So like there's no room for me to panic right now or predict doom. It's kind of in an uneasy waiting period of just waiting to see when all of this hopefully clicks. Oh, you guys have been commenting like mother bleepers. I can't really read them, so I'm just going to bring them right up. This team on paper looks like Madden Matrix 2.0. Can't wait to see them work. Love Ben Solak mention. Solak's funny because there's times where if what he writes is something I agree with, I think he's the most brilliant guy in the world, but then he's also got an ability to offend me at times. I told him today, I said, listen, Ben, don't let him steal your boyish enthusiasm, okay? You're working for the man now. You're working for ESPN. Don't let the suits suck the energy and joy out of your profession. One of the best things about Ben Solak is that he's kind of a nerdy guy in a good way, but he also just still flat out loves football, and I think he loves learning about it. He'll be out there at practice tomorrow too, so I might talk to him a little bit. I told him not to let the suits. I said, don't let him try to turn you into a C word, which Gen Z does not. It looked like It's like I might have said like some other genuinely horrible words or something. I wanted to give him the full old school NFL experience. Sometimes it takes an instance for it to click. Yeah, there are some really good things going on right now. It's not gonna show up versus this defense in practice on a day-by-day basis. The fits and starts, I'll take and accept at this moment. Coming back and having a clean operation today and not being just as much of a miserable mess, but just looking more like a functioning offense that was struggling against a really good defense, it's a bigger victory than it might otherwise be, and I'm taking it as a win. 314 watching. Only 5 likes. My God. Yeah, oh yeah, give me some likes and subscriptions and all that stuff. People seem to like that. Let's see, kind of forgot about Irv Smith. Any excitement for Irv? You know what? I'm going to have to lean on. I have not noticed Irv Smith on any. I'll get back to you on that, Cam. All right. Okay. I got to get going because I got to go on with Clinton a little bit. And the sunlight is making it impossible for me to see this screen. I'm in West Virginia, and this is the Airbnb. For those of you who haven't seen this yet, a lot of people have accused me of using a green screen and a screensaver as my background. No, this is real life. It feels like it's about maybe 72 degrees out right now. It's overcast. The difference in energy level at practice by the end is pretty noticeable. I thought today as I was sitting out there, like usually I lose watching practice. I probably lose anywhere between 5 to 10 pounds watching a practice in Houston, and I think I'm actually gaining weight during these practices up here. It's just gorgeous. I don't want to advocate for training camp to be up here 100% of the time because I know that would rob many of you of the chance to come watch the team. And yet selfishly, I'm a little bit advocating for that. So I'm going to hopefully talk to Daniil Hunter tomorrow or Thursday. I'm going to get him one of those 2 days, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to talk to him.